Hey there, so you're driving a VW Passat, maybe a 98 to an '05 model, and it's been giving you some grief. Well, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to jump right in and figure out one of the most common problems with these cars, the fuel pump. Let's get to it. You know the feeling? Your car won't start, or it's sputtering, just not driving right. It's super frustrating, believe me, I get it. And a bad fuel pump? It's a classic suspect. But you definitely don't want to just throw a new one in without being sure. So, we're going to walk through 3 simple tests to nail this down. A quick listening test, some basic electrical checks, and then the final definitive pressure test. All right, first things first. Before we even think about grabbing any tools, let's just make sure we're actually barking up the right tree. Do any of these classic symptoms sound a little too familiar? So, maybe the engine just refuses to start. That's a big one. Or maybe it starts, but when you step on the gas, it sputters and struggles for power. You might just feel a general lack of performance, or you might even hear this weird, high-pitched whining noise coming from the back of the car. If you're nodding along to any of these, yeah, you're right to be looking at that fuel pump. Okay, let's get into our first official test. And the best part about this one, you don't need a single tool. It's the absolute easiest place to start, and it can tell you a whole lot in just a couple of seconds. So here's what you're going to do. First, just go ahead and unscrew your gas cap. This just helps you hear things a little better. Then you'll need a helper to hop in the driver's seat. Tell them to turn the key just to the on position. And this is important. Do not try to start the engine. Your job is to be quiet and listen really closely, right around the back seat. You should hear a faint, low hum for about 2 seconds. That's the pump priming the system. So what did you hear? This is where our diagnostic path splits in 2. If you heard that hum, that's great news in a way. It means the pump is getting power. Your issue is probably something else, like a clog or low fuel pressure. But if you heard nothing, just silence, well, that tells us one of 2 things. Either the pump isn't getting any electricity, or the pump itself is dead. And that means it's time for step 2. Okay, so the pump was silent. Time to put on our detective hats and trace the electricity. Before we blame the pump, we have to be sure that power is actually making it back there in the first place. And you always want to start with the easy stuff. So find the fuse panel. It's right there on the side of the dash by the driver's door. You're looking for fuse number 28. Pull it out and see if it's blown. If that fuse looks good, the next thing to check is the fuel pump relay, which you'll usually find tucked up under the dashboard. Think of these as the gatekeepers for the pump's power. All right, if the fuse and the relay checked out, it's time to test the pump motor itself. And for this, you are going to need a multimeter. But don't worry, it's easy. You just have to get to the pump's electrical connector. It's actually right under the back seat. Just pull that seat cushion up, and you'll see the access panel right there. So with our multimeter, we're going to measure something called ohms. Now, don't let that term scare you. All it is a measure of electrical resistance. Think of it like we're checking the motor's pulse. We're just making sure the wiring inside the pump motor is still good and not broken or shorted out. And this right here, this is the magic number we're hunting for. Set your multimeter to ohms, and you're going to touch the probes to pins 1 and 4 on that connector. Those are the 2 outer pins. On a healthy pump, you should see a reading somewhere between 1 and 3 ohms. Yeah, and the rule here is pretty simple. If your meter shows 0, or maybe it says OL for an open loop, or really just anything that isn't in that 1 to 3 range, then you know for sure the motor inside that pump is toast. It's a really clear-cut test. If your numbers are off, you've found your culprit. But what if you did hear the hum back in step 1, and the electricals all checked out okay? Where do you go from there? Well, now it's time to get the hard data. The fuel pressure test is the final boss here. It tells us not just if the pump is running, but how well it's actually doing its job. For this part, you'll need a fuel pressure test kit. You're going to connect the gauge to a little valve on the fuel rail up in the engine bay. It's called a Schrader valve, and it looks just like the valve stem on your tire. Just screw the gauge on there nice and snug. Okay, once you're hooked up, go ahead and start the car. With the engine idling, you should be seeing right around 3.5 bar or 50 psi. Now, if you have the 1.8T turbo engine, there's a quick extra check. Pull the little vacuum hose off the pressure regulator. The pressure should jump up to about 4 bar or 58 psi. But here's the most important part for any model. Shut the engine off and just watch the gauge for 10 minutes. The pressure needs to stay above 2 bar. If it drops like a rock, that means the little check valve inside your fuel pump has failed. And there you have it. That brings us to our final answer. After running through these tests, you know exactly what's going on. If the pump was silent and failed the ohm test, you need a new pump. If the pump runs but your pressure is low or it doesn't hold, you need a new pump assembly. And hey, if your pressure is actually too high, your problem is probably the pressure regulator. So the question isn't what's wrong with my car anymore, it's which part am I ordering next?